Is that nice? Eitan Katz, Nigun MTM. I'm not sure what MTM stands for. I know it's not Mary Tyler Moore. I feel like I should know what MTM stands for, but I don't. How's everybody doing? Let's light up the darkness. My energy is a little low today. I gave platelets, which always takes a little bit of energy out of you. I gave a double, what's it called? A double, I don't know, not a double portion, a double something, double set. At any rate, and I had to have like that big N95 mask on, you know, because I'm in the hospital giving the blood. And so like my breathing was a little reduced. So my energy's a little low. Please forgive me. I'll do the best that I can. Who is with us as we get together for the penultimate session of Tractate Megillah? Tonight we're doing page 30, and tomorrow night, Thursday, a siyum on Tractate Megillah. We'll do pages 31 and 32 and the same night and drink a l'chaim for completing Tractate Megillah, God willing. So who's with us tonight for the penultimate session? Stephen in New Hampshire, Nancy in North Carolina, Paul in Minneapolis, Melissa in Great Neck, Shandor in the Bronx, James in Indianapolis, John in Maine, Paul in the Great Northwest, Yehud in South Carolina, Iris in Camarillo, Paul in Chicago, Bill in mid-Missouri. My master's thesis manuscript is due at midnight Pacific time tonight. It's almost done, but still, pray for me, my friends. Bill, you're going to do great. It's going to be done on time, and it's going to change the world. I think your master's thesis will be fascinating. Thomas in West Virginia, Pauline in Arkansas, Tom in PA, Karen in Northern California. A double donation. I think it's called like a double unit. I can't remember like what it's called right now, but a double, whatever it was. Rebecca in LA, Mona in Washington, Michelle in Indiana. Tom, I'm drinking a beer tonight. Is that permitted? No, Tom, it is encouraged. Yosef in Lowell, Massachusetts. Over there on the YouTube side, Aoife saying shalom from Florida, and all the talk of why the sages lived so long. Undoubtedly, they all had many virtues and merit, but perhaps it comes down to the fact that we needed them longer than other. Very nice, very nice. Yes, we needed the sages' wisdom. Tragically, even some great sages didn't live so long, but yes, we definitely needed their wisdom. Tonight's episode of AT Daily, sponsored by Michael and Jeannie Schechter. Such a nice dedication. In honor of Sal and Nina meeting 25 years ago, they made the donation right before New Year's. Nina and I met on New Year's Eve. We are blessed that you came together and have created this place for so many to study Talmud. Thank you so much, Michael and Jeannie. May you and all your loved ones be showered in blessings, and we say Amen. And thank you for enabling us to share more Torah with more people. All right, let's get into it. This is going to be kind of fun and super relevant because we're just entering this period of the calendar, which has some special features of the Hebrew calendar coming in the next couple of months. And we're actually going to address the discussion of how the calendar ended up that way in our Gemara tonight. And then we'll actually look at this year's calendar and go through what's coming up. This is going to be fun. So we picked this up at the very bottom of 29b. An Amoraic dispute, right? And a dispute of the Amoraim, the sages of the Gemara, was stated. If the Shabbos on which the portion of Shekhalim is to be read occurs on the Shabbos in which the regular weekly portion is, and you shall command, meaning Tetzaveh, right? That's Parshas Tetzaveh. That's one of the regular weekly Torah portions. Right, so if Shekhalim coincides with Tetzaveh, that's what they're saying, what should be done? And Rabbi Yitzhak Napacha said, 6 people read from the portion Tetzaveh until, but not including the weekly portion when you take the count, Kisisa, and 1 person reads the portion of Shekhalim from when you take the count until, but not including the verse, and you shall make a copper laver. Now, what's going on here is that leading up to Passover, right? Leading up to Pesach, there's going to be a series of special readings that are added to the weekly Torah portions to sort of help us get ready for Passover, help us get ready for commemorating the liberation from slavery in Egypt. One of those is Shekhalim, but Shekhalim also kind of needs to coincide or should coincide with what's going on when the temple is standing, the fact that there's going to be this collection of the half shekels as we read in Tractate Shekhalim. This is not Tractate Shekhalim, this is special Torah reading Shekhalim that we do every year. But it's also like it occurs in the Torah not very far away from the Torah readings that are coming up on those Shabbos anyway. And so it can get a little bit confusing, somebody who comes in and isn't paying attention exactly what's being read that week. Is this the regular Torah portion? Do we skip a few chapters and now we're on this other part of Exodus, Sefer Exodus, the second book of the Torah? Or, it's that special reading of Shekhalim. So the sages kind of worked out what the calendar would be. And we'll get into it a little bit more specifically in a moment. So they're figuring out, so when are they going to read this special Torah reading, Shekhalim, when it happens to fall on what would otherwise be the Torah reading, Tetzaveh, on Shabbos morning? And so people will mistakenly say that they merely extended the regular reading and then they halted there, and they will not realize that the last reading was actually for the sake of Shekhalim, that special Shabbos reading during the weeks leading up to Passover. Rather, Abaye said 6 people read from Tetzaveh, Torah portion Tetzaveh, until but not including the law, and you shall make a copper laver for the Mishkan, for the tabernacle in the wilderness, which concludes with the portion used for Shekhalim. And then 1 person repeats and reads Shekhalim from when you take the count until, but not including, and you shall make a copper laver. And the repetition of this portion serves to highlight the fact that it was read for the sake of reading the special portion Shekhalim. So the Gemara raises an objection from a Baraisa. If the Shabbos on which Shekhalim is to be read occurs on the Shabbos on which the portion to be read for the regular weekly reading is adjacent to Shekhalim, whether on the Shabbos preceding that Shabbos or following it, so then they read and repeat Shekhalim. So like the basic underlying principle here is that there's always 2 competing values. On the one hand, the rabbis want to make sure that we are properly, spiritually, mentally, emotionally getting focused on and preparing for Passover. We start preparing for Passover many weeks in advance. On the other hand, we don't want people to get confused when they come to services and hear the Torah reading on Shabbat morning. And on the third hand, when the temple was standing, there was also this idea that in the springtime, during the month of Adar, they're going to announce and start that collection of the half shekels that are collected from every Jew throughout Israel and even from outside of Israel, that is going to fund the communal offerings given in the temple during the year, as well as temple maintenance, etc. So the Gemara notes, it is taught in a Baraisa in accordance with the opinion of Abaye, if the Shabbos on which Shekhalim is to be read occurs on the Shabbos on which the regular portion itself is Kisisa, That's another Torah portion that, in fact, includes the golden calf, right? Very sad. The first part of the portion is read once as a part of the weekly reading and then repeated as the portion Shekhalim. Okay, so let's just go to how the law came out on this. We're not going to go through every nuance of how they worked out, which Shabbos we do Shekhalim and which Shabbos we don't. So here's the halacha, the law. When the reading of Shekhalim occurs on the Shabbos, when the regular portion is Tetzaveh, right? Because Shekhalim is taken from Tetzaveh. So when the new moon of Adar occurs on the Shabbos, on which the regular weekly portion is Tetzaveh, so 6 people read from Tetzaveh until, but not including, and you shall make a copper laver. And the 7th reads Shekhalim by going back and repeating the last section from when you take the count until, and you shall make a copper laver. And this ruling is in accordance with the opinion of Abaye. When the new moon of Adar occurs on the Shabbos on which the regular weekly portion is when you take the count, kisisa, so 6 read the entire portion, and the 7th goes back and repeats the last section from when you take the count until you shall make a copper laver, in accordance with the opinion of Abaye. However, nowadays, the order of the weekly portions are set in advance so that Rosh Hodesh Adar, the beginning of Adar, never coincides with either Kisisa or Tetzaveh, right? So we don't have this problem because the calendar has been preset. Remembering, why are they dealing with that situation? Because in ancient times, right, the new month didn't begin until witnesses came before the Sanhedrin in Jerusalem or later in Yavne, and they decreed that the new month has started, and so things could slide forward and backwards, plus you have leap years, and so it could happen, and they needed to account for that. Now, it doesn't happen. Okay, so I thought what we would do now is kind of preview, just so you get a feeling for what it is that we're talking about as we're reading today in the Gemara, the Shabbats that are actually coming up on our calendar. Okay, so today is January 12th. This Shabbos is Shabashira. Now, that's not one of the special Shabbats leading up to Passover. There's the 4 that we're going to be talking about. But it is a special Shabbos, and it's called Shabashira because this is Torah portion Beshalach, and that includes that the children of Israel walk through the Sea of Reeds. It's actually my favorite Torah portion. It's beautiful. And we sing the song at the sea. That's why it's called Shabashira. Shira means song. And so this Shabbos, in the Torah reading, we read the song at the sea, right? And this includes beautiful words like Ozi v'zimras ya vayhi li lishua, right? Ozi v'zimras ya vayhi li lishua. The Lord is my strength and song. He was salvation to me. And if you look in the Torah, by the way, at the end of the song at the sea, you see the word yam, sea, at the right edge of the column, and yam, sea, at the left edge of the column. And in between, it says the Jews walked through on dry land in the midst of the sea, like a beautiful visual representation in the Torah. Okay, so this is Shabashira, and it's Torah portion Beshalach. Those go together. Then we're going to have Tu B'Shvat next week on Martin Luther King Day. And then the Shabbat after that is Parshas Yisro, Jethro. That is the Torah portion that has the 10 commandments in it. So that following week, we will stand in synagogue when the 10 commandments are read. The following Shabbat after that is Parshas Mishpatim, right? Torah portion Mishpatim, which is all about laws. And that's also Shabbos Mevarchim for Adar. Is it already? For Adar 1. It'll be, so that is the Shabbat before Rosh Hodesh Adar. So the Shabbat before a new month begins during that week. we bless the coming month in synagogue Shabbos morning. So it's always a Shabbos Mevarchim when Rosh Hodesh is coming up during the following week. And this year is a leap year in the Jewish calendar. 7 out of every 19 years are leap years. So it's either every other year or every third year. And so this year is going to have 2 months of Adar. When there's Adar twice in the Hebrew calendar, we celebrate Purim in 2nd Adar, not in 1st Adar. Why? So that it should have the same distance to Passover. If it was in the 1st Adar, then it would be 2 months until Passover. Rather, we want Purim to be 1 month before Passover. So that'll be Mishpatim on January 29th. On February 5th, it will be Parshas Teruma. And so since some years we have leap months and other years we don't, then there's a bunch of Torah portions that in years without a leap year, we have a double Torah portion. And they put kind of shorter Torah portions together. That's all preset in advance. But when we have a leap year, then it's single Torah portions, not doubles. On February 12th, it will be Torah portion Tetzavet. That's the one that we're reading about right here and how that's going to intersect with Shekhalim. So then we have Kisisa. That's the one with the story of the golden calf in it. That's going to be on February 19th. And then on February 26th, it's going to be Torah portion Vayakhel, and that will be Shabbos Shekhalim. So what'll happen on that week is we'll read that Torah portion Vayakhel, and it'll be divided into 7 aliyahs. And then the 7th, then after the 7th aliyah, there's always a maftir, kind of an 8th aliyah, but it's not the 8th aliyah, it's the maftir. And for the maftir, we'll read this special Torah portion, Shekhalim, where it talks about collecting the shekels. And that's also going to be Shabbos Mevarchim, Rosh Hodesh, Adar 2. So on that Shabbos, we'll bless that Adar 2 is starting during the following week. Rosh Hodesh Adar 2 will be on Thursday and Friday, February 3rd and 4th. Then it'll be Torah portion Pekudei on Saturday the 5th. You don't have to memorize this or anything. It's just I'm giving you a sense of how it's going to flow. Then on March 12th, it'll be the second of those special Shabbats preparing for Passover, Shabbos Zachor. And we're going to be reading about that today in our Gemara. What is Shabbos Zachor? That's when we remember to forget Amalek. Then, during the week that follows that, on Wednesday night, it will be Purim. Purim is going to come on Wednesday night, March 16th. And then Purim Day will be on March 17th. And we'll read the book of Esther, God willing, live on Facebook like we always do. Then that Shabbos, March 19th, will be a Torah portion Tzav. Then March 26th, it'll be Torah portion Shemini, and then there'll be the third of the special readings. That'll be Shabbos Parah, Shabbat Parah, where we're going to read the portion of the red heifer for Maftir on that week. And then the following week after that, it's going to be Rosh Hodesh Nisan, when the month of Nisan, which contains Passover, the Rosh Hodesh for that is actually going to land on Shabbos. And that'll be Torah portion Tazria, but we'll also be doing the special prayers and readings for Rosh Hodesh in synagogue that day. Then Saturday, April 9th, it's going to be Torah portion Metzora, where we read about the one who has Tzoraas. And that'll be Shabbos Hagadol. That's the Shabbos right before Pesach, right before Passover. In old times, nowadays, rabbis will give a teaching, some kind of a sermon every Shabbos. Back in ancient times, rabbis didn't do that. They would only give a sermon in synagogue twice a year. What were those days? Shabbos Hagadol was one of them, and Shabbos Shuvah was the other. The Shabbos between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, and the Shabbos right before Passover. And then Passover will land on April 15th. This year, it's going to be a Friday night Passover. Okay, so that gives you a little bit of a sense of how the calendar works in modern times and how it's actually going to work this year. Let's get back to our Gemara. Okay, so I did all that. Right. So the new moon of Adar occurs during the middle of the Mishnah states, if the new moon of Adar occurs during the middle of the week, the congregation advances the reading of Shekhalim to the previous week. What is the law on this? If the new moon, this is the halacha, if the new moon of Adar, right, of the month of Adar, the one that contains Purim, if it occurs during the middle of the week, and even if it occurs on Friday, so the special reading for Shekhalim is read on the previous Shabbos. Similarly, if Purim occurs on Friday, the portion of Zachor, that's the one where we remember to forget Amalek, is read on the previous Shabbos. And this ruling is in accordance with the opinion of Rav, for whenever he disputes ritual matters with Shmuel, the halacha is ruled in accordance with Rav. Okay, now we're going to skip some paragraph. So that the first of those 4 special Shabbats is Shekhalim. Okay, the Mishnah states on the second Shabbat of the Hebrew month of Adar, the Shabbat prior to Purim, they read the portion of Zachor, Parsha Zachor. Remember what Amalek did. That occurs in the Torah in the book of Deuteronomy, but we read that little section here, right, during this one of the second of the 4 special Shabbats before Passover. And the portion of Zachor is it's leading up to Passover, but it's especially associated with Purim. Why? Because Haman, who tried to destroy the Jewish people, is understood to be a descendant of Amalek. And so the victory over Haman and his supporters was a victory against Amalek. And with regard to this, there's an Amoraic dispute, which was stated with regard to when Purim occurs on a Friday. Rav said the congregation advances the reading of the portion of Zachor to the previous Shabbos, and Shmuel said they defer it to the Shabbat following Purim. What is the law? On the Shabbat immediately before Purim, 2 Torah scrolls are removed from the ark. From the first, the regular portion of that week is read, and from the second, we read the portion of Zachor during the Maftir Aliyah. And the Haftorah is read from the account of the battle against Amalek in the book of 1 Samuel chapter 15. Some begin from the first verse of that chapter. Some hold that the obligation to read the portion of Zachor is a biblical requirement, and therefore everyone must be particularly careful to hear it when we read the part about Amalek as the maftir from the Torah, as opposed to the Haftorah from Ezekiel. And the Magen Avraham states that if one did not hear it then, one may rely on the Torah reading that is on Purim, which also mentions the destruction of Amalek. Okay? And one thing that we do, as we'll see, is we during these special 4 Shabbats, where we during the Maftir, right, the additional reading during the after the 7 Aliyahs of that week's Torah portion, we read the special part, of Shekhalim or Zachor or Para, etc. And then the Haftorah, we always read a selection from the prophets after the Torah reading. During those 4 special Shabbats, we replace what would have been the regular Haftorah reading for that week's Torah portion with the special Haftorah for those special Shabbats. Okay, I'm skipping a few more paragraphs. I'm near the bottom of page 30A side. The Mishnah states, on the 3rd Shabbos, the 3rd of these special Shabboses, they read the portion of Para, the red heifer. This is Numbers 19, 1 through 22. And the sages taught in a Baraisa, what is the 3rd Shabbat? Which is the 3rd Shabbos? And the answer is, whichever Shabbos occurs immediately after Purim, right? So it's not that it's 4 weeks in a row leading to Passover. It's that they have to sort of fit in with what's going on in the calendar. But Zachor is right before Purim and Para is right after Purim. And it was also stated, Rabbi Chama, the son of Rabbi Hanina, said, the Shabbos that is immediately after the new moon of Nisan. Not Purim, but the Shabbos that is immediately after the new moon of Nisan. That sounds like a different answer. The Gemara comments, and these 2 statements do not disagree, as they refer to different cases. And this statement of Rabbi Chama, the son of Rabbi Hanina, is referring to a case where the new moon of Nisan occurs on Shabbos itself. So in that case, the portion of HaChodesh, the fourth of these Shabbats, right, where we read the special portion, which is, right, we've mentioned it over and over and over again, Exodus 12:1, the first command given to the Jewish people as a nation. We read that every Rosh Hodesh, and we read it on Shabbos, even if it's not Rosh Hodesh, if we land on that special Shabbos HaChodesh. Okay, so in that case, the portion of HaChodesh is read then, and therefore the reading of Parah is deferred to the following Shabbos. And that statement of the Baraisa is referring to a case where the new moon of Nisan occurs during the middle of the week, and therefore HaChodesh is read on the Shabbos immediately preceding the new moon, and Parah is read on the Shabbos before that one, which is the Shabbos adjacent to Purim and right after it. What is the law? On the third Shabbos, they read the portion of Parah. When the new moon of Adar occurs on Shabbos, no portion is read on the third Shabbos, and Parah is read on the fourth Shabbos. When the new moon of Adar occurs during the week, Parah is read on the third Shabbos, and 2 Torah scrolls are removed from the ark. From the first, the regular weekly portion is read, and from the second, the special reading of Parah, the red heifer, is read as the maftir, and the special haftarah is from Ezekiel 36:16 through 36. However, Sephardic Jews and members of other communities conclude 2 verses later at verse 38. More of that diversity in the Jewish world. Now we go to the fourth Shabbos, and the Mishnah states, on the fourth Shabbos, they read the portion, HaChodesh, this month shall be for you the first of months. What is that referring to? Nisan, the Hebrew month that contains Passover. Not Tishrei, the Hebrew month that contains Rosh Hashanah and is the beginning of the year, but that's just the way God said it. Nisan is like the first month, but we begin the year at Rosh Hashanah in Tishrei. Nevertheless, it was the first time that we celebrated Rosh Hodesh, the first time that we established the calendar as the Jewish nation started with Nisan. Why? Because that was the month in which we were leaving Egypt, when God redeemed us. So on the fourth Shabbos, they read the portion HaChodesh, this month shall be for you. And the sages taught in a Baraisa when the new moon of Adar occurs on Shabbos. So then they read Kisisa, the Torah portion Kisisa, as the portion of Shekhalim, and they read as the Haftorah, the story involving Jehoiada, the priest, from 2 Kings 12:1 through 27. And which is the first Shabbos? The Shabbos of whichever week during which the new moon of Adar occurs, and this is the case even if it occurs on Friday. Okay, getting confusing. So what is the law? Let's have Rav Steinsaltz break it down for us. The law is that the week within which the new moon of Nisan, the week when Rosh Hodesh Nisan lands, that's the fourth week on which a special portion is read. So 2 Torah scrolls are removed from the ark. From the first, we read the regular weekly Torah portion, and from the second, we read HaChodesh, which we also read every Rosh Hodesh, but now it's the special reading for Shabbos, the fourth of the special Shabboses. And on that week, the Haftorah is taken from Ezekiel, and the Sephardic custom is to read Ezekiel 45:18 through 46:15, while in Ashkenazic communities, they read 45:16 through 46:18. And if the new moon of Nisan actually lands on Shabbos, so then 3 Torah scrolls are removed from the ark. From the first scroll, 6 or more people read the regular weekly portion. From the second scroll, a 7th person reads the portion of the new moon, Rosh Hodesh. And from the third, HaChodesh is read. Even in this case, the Haftorah is the one normally read with HaChodesh, not the Haftorah normally read when the new moon occurs on Shabbos. However, some add the first and last verses of that Haftorah. Now we're on 30b. And the Mishnah states, on the 5th Shabbos, we resume the regular weekly order. And the Gemara clarifies the Mishnah's intent. To the order of what does one resume? And Rabbi Ami said, one resumes the regular weekly order of Torah portions. And Rabbi Ami holds that on the weeks on which the special portions are read, the regular weekly Torah portion is not read at all. And therefore the cycle is resumed only on the 5th Shabbos. That's not the law. we read the regular Torah portions, we just add the special reading at Maftir. And Rabbi Yirmiyah said one resumes the regular weekly order of the Haftorahs. That is the law, because the Haftorahs on the special Shabbats are replaced with the special Haftorah, the special readings from the prophets. And then once we end those special Shabbats, we go back to the regular order of Haftorahs that accompany the regular weekly Torah readings. And Rabbi Yirmiyah holds that even on the Shabbats on which the special portions are read, the regular weekly portion is still read. That's the law. And the special portion is read by the last reader as Maftir. However, the Haftorah of the regular cycle is entirely replaced with a portion from the prophets that parallels the special portion. And as such, it is the cycle of Haftorahs that is resumed on the fifth Shabbat, meaning when we get back to normal, business as usual. And Abaye said it stands to reason that one should rule in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Ami. As we learned in the Mishnah, for all special days, we interrupt the regular order of readings, and a special portion relating to the character of that day is read, and this applies to the new moon, special reading for Rosh Hodesh, to Hanukkah, there's a special reading for Hanukkah, to Purim, to fast days, to the non-priestly watches, and to Yom Kippur. And Abaye explains his proof, granted, according to the one who said that one resumes the regular weekly order of Torah portions, this statement in the Mishnah is referring to the fact that there is a reading of the weekly Torah portion on weekdays. If one of the special days listed in the Mishnah occurs on a Monday or Thursday, the weekly Torah reading is replaced by the special portion for that day. However, to the one who said that one resumes the regular weekly order of Haftorahs, what could the Mishnah mean when it says that the regular cycle is interrupted? Is there a Haftorah on weekdays? And the Mishnah therefore supports Rabbi Ami's opinion. And the other one, Rabbi Yirmiyah, would counter, this case is as it is, and that case is as it is. On days when there's a Haftorah, the reference in the Mishnah is to the order of the Haftorahs. And on weekdays when there's no Haftorah, the reference is to the order of the Torah readings, and therefore no proof can be deduced from the Mishnah. And as I said, the law is, during the special Shabbats, we replace the Haftorahs with the special Haftorahs, and when that ends, we get back to business as usual. Okay, what about fast days? The Gemara asks, on fast days, why do I need to have any interruption of the regular order of Torah readings? Let us read in the morning the regular weekly portion of the matter of the day, and in the afternoon service, let us read the portion of the fast day. And the Gemara comments, this supports the statement of Rav Huna. For Rav Huna said, from the morning of communal fasts, a gathering is held in the synagogue. We read this in Tractate Tainus. And the community leaders examine the conduct of the townspeople and admonish those whose behavior is found wanting. Right? This is the idea that in ancient times, if the drought, was delaying the rain, it must be because our behavior is bad and God is withholding the rain until we make a proper teshuvah, until we atone for our transgressions. Therefore, since the town is sort of examining its deeds in the morning in a public way, this is like sort of after a few Shabbats of a series of fast days, so they don't have time for Torah reading in the morning. And the Gemara asks, what does the community do on a public fast day? Abaye said, from the morning until the middle of the day, the community gathers in the synagogue, and the leaders examine the affairs of the town to determine whether and how the people's conduct needs to be improved. From the middle of the day until the evening, a quarter of the day is spent reading from the Torah and reading the Haftorah, and a quarter of the day is spent praying, as it is stated, Nehemiah. And they read in the book of the Torah of the Lord their God 1/4 of the day, and a quarter of the day they confessed, and they prostrated themselves before the Lord their God. And the Gemara objects, but perhaps I should reverse the order. And the first half of the day should be spent reading from the Torah. That's why we're discussing this. We're talking about public readings of Torah. So maybe they should read the Torah first and then pray. And then the second half of the day, they should be spent examining the affairs of the townspeople. And the Gemara answers, it should not enter your mind to say this. As it is written, then everyone who trembled at the words of the God of Israel due to the transgression of the exiles gathered around me, and I sat appalled until the evening offering. That's Ezra talking at Ezra 9:4. And it is written in the next verse, and at the evening offering I arose from my fast, and having ripped my garment and my mantle, I fell on my knees and I spread out my hands to the Lord my God. This indicates that the first half of a public fast should be dedicated to an inspection of the community's behavior, and the rest of the day should be devoted to prayer. That concludes our discussion of Mishnah number 5 here in chapter 4. Now we open Mishnah number 6, and I believe that is the final Mishnah of Tractate Megillah. So we're gonna read the Mishnah, and we're gonna just start the Gemara. Mishnah number 6. On the first day of Passover, the congregation reads from the portion of the festivals of Leviticus, right? We've been talking about what are the public Torah readings. Now we're talking about what Torah readings are done on particular holidays, starting with Passover. So on the first day of Passover, the congregation reads from the portion of the festivals of Leviticus. We find this at Leviticus 22:26 through 23:44. On Shavuos, they read the portion of the 7 weeks, right? We count 7 weeks from the second day of Passover, and then the 50th day is when we receive the Torah, and that's Shavuos, right? So it's natural that we would read that on Shavuos. On Rosh Hashanah, they read the portion of, and in the 7th month, on the first of the month, meaning the laws of Rosh Hashanah. And on Yom Kippur, they read the portion after the death, right? After the death, I think of Aaron's sons, Nadav and Avihu. And on the first festival day of Sukkot, they read from the portion of the festivals of Leviticus, meaning the laws of Sukkot. And on the other days of Sukkot, they read selections from the portion of the offerings of Sukkot, right? When they dedicated the tabernacle and all the princes brought the various gifts from each tribe. What is a Torah reading on Hanukkah? On each day of Hanukkah, they read selections from the portion of the dedication of the altar by the tribal princes that I just mentioned. And on Purim, they read the portion of, and Amalek came and attacked the children of Israel from behind. On the new moon, on Rosh Hodesh of any Hebrew month, the beginning of the month, they read the portion of, and in the beginnings of your months, what offerings are brought when it's a Rosh Hodesh. And in the non-priestly watches, they read the act of creation, Genesis, the beginning of the book of Genesis. Remember, the non-priestly watches are, that when offerings are brought every day in the temple, there are sort of representatives of the nation of Israel that accompany the Kohanim, the priests, and the Leviim who serve the priests in the temple. But some of those representatives of the nation aren't actually in the temple. They're in their own synagogues. But since they are special representatives of the nation, on the day where they are in their synagogue and it's their non-priestly watch on the schedule, there in that synagogue they add, this is when the temple is standing, the story of the creation of the world. And those remind, and on fast days, what's the Torah readings on fast days? They read the portion of blessings and curses. If you follow my laws, these are all the blessings that you're going to receive. And if you stray after the gods of others, these are the curses that will befall you, from Leviticus chapter 26. And one should not interrupt the reading of the curses by having two different people read them. Rather, one person reads all of them. We're on 31a right now. On Mondays and on Thursdays, and because there's short Torah readings every Monday and Thursday during the week in the morning. On Mondays and on Thursdays. And on Shabbos during the afternoon service, right? So Shabbos morning, we read the whole Torah portion of the week, 7 Aliyahs, Maftir, Haftorah, etc. Shabbos afternoon, by Mincha, we have that same short reading, like the first 10 verses of the next week's Torah portion. And then we do it again Monday morning, and then we do it again Thursday morning. So on Mondays and on Thursdays and on Shabbos during the afternoon service, they read in accordance with the regular weekly order, i.e. they proceed to read the first section of the Torah portion that follows the portion that was read on that morning of Shabbos. The afternoon is the next Torah portion. However, these readings are not counted as a progression in the reckonings of the Torah portions, i.e. they do not proceed on Monday to read the section that immediately follows the section that they read Shabbos afternoon. Rather, they repeat what they read Shabbos afternoon, and they repeat it again on Thursday morning. On festivals and holidays, they read a portion relating to the character of the day, as it is stated, and Moses declared to the children of Israel the appointed seasons of the Lord, Leviticus 23:44, which indicates that part of the mitzvah, the commandment of the festivals, is that the people should read the Torah portion relating to them, each one in its appointed time. That is the final Mishnah here of Tractate Megillah. And we're just going to read a few paragraphs of the Gemara so we make a little headway into page 31. Since tomorrow we're going to read the rest of page 31, the short page 32, and then the Hadran, right, which when we make a siyum, that special reading that we read at the end of every tractate. So just starting the Gemara on Mishnah number 6. The sages taught in a Baraisa, on the first day of Passover, the congregation reads from the portion of the festivals. And they read as the Haftarah the account of the Passover that was celebrated at Gilgal. That's from Joshua chapter 5, verses 2 through 14. And the Gemara comments, and nowadays, right, this is the Gemara talking 1,500 years ago, at least 15 to 1,800 years ago. And nowadays, in the diaspora, outside the land of Israel, when there are 2 festival days of Passover, right? We talked many times. You have 2 days for the Passover, the full festival of Passover celebrated on the 1 day in Israel and 2 days outside of Israel, owing to when the calendar was established. The new months were established by the Sanhedrin. It took time for the diaspora to find out which day the Sanhedrin had actually selected as the first day of the month. So there's a 2 days at the beginning of Passover and 2 days at the end of Passover. We have a 2-day Shavuos outside of Israel, 1 day in Israel. We have a 2-day festival at the beginning of Sukkot outside of Israel, 1 day in Israel, etc. And nowadays in the diaspora, when there are 2 festival days of Passover, so on the first day they read as the Haftorah the account of Passover celebrated at Gilgal, and on the second festival day, only outside of Israel, we read from the account of Passover that was observed by Josiah in 2 Kings chapter 23, a righteous king who reestablished a proper observance of Passover after the previous king who led the nation into idolatry allowed the proper observance of Passover in the nation to lapse, as it were. And the Baraisa continues, and on the other days of Passover, one collects and reads from various Torah portions of matters relating to Passover. The other days of Passover are the intermediate days of Passover. And the intermediate days of Passover and the intermediate days of Sukkot is going to be the subject of our next tractate, Moed Katan. So on the other days of Passover, one collects and reads from various Torah portions of matters relating to Passover. And the Gemara asks, what are these portions? And Rav Papa said, we have a mnemonic, Mem, Aleph, Pei, Vav. Each letter stands for a different reading. Mem for the portion of Mishku, draw out and take your lambs. Aleph for Im, if you lend money to any of my people. Pei for the portion Pesol, hew for yourself. And Vav for the portion Vaidaber, and the Lord spoke. Special readings that we read during the week of Passover. And the Baraisa continues, on the last day of Passover, which is a full festival day, they read the portion, and it came to pass when Pharaoh let the people go, Exodus 13:17 through 15:26, because it includes the account of the splitting of the Red Sea. That's the same as this week's Torah portion, Beshalach. And they read as the Haftarah, the portion, and David spoke, 2 Samuel 22, which is the Song of David. And in the diaspora, on the next day, the 8th day of Passover, which is a full festival day, but only outside of Israel, in Israel, it's back to work. And they read the portion, all the firstborns, from Deuteronomy 15:19, and they read as the Haftarah, the portion of this very day, from Isaiah 10 through 12, because it discusses the downfall of Sennacherib, which occurred on the night of Passover, the connection to Passover. And finally, last paragraph, Abaye said, and nowadays, on the 8 days of Passover in the diaspora, everyone is accustomed to read portions that are indicated by the mnemonic phrase, draw the bull, sanctify with money, hew in the wilderness, send the firstborn. And this alludes to the following portions, the ones that are read on the 8th day of Passover. Okay, that's what I've got for us today. Let's go to your comments and questions. Okay. Okay, Nina's telling me there's no questions, but there's an interesting conversation between Bill and Tom about the history of sermons, and here's part of it. Bill, that's fascinating. I didn't realize that the practice of weekly sermons was so relatively new to Judaism. I knew Christianity and Islam have both had them since our earliest days, so I suppose I just assumed we inherited it from Judaism. Tom, Bill Eldridge, Jesus was one of many preachers who addressed his followers and crowds. Judaism was still dealing with the transition from temple Judaism to synagogue Judaism. Bill, see, I knew that sermons in general were at least known in the time period from that, but it's worth noting I can only think of one instance in specific where one of Jesus' sermons can be said to be in a synagogue as such, so I suppose it's not dispositive. Tom, as with the rest of classical antiquity, there's just not enough documentation to make any more than educated guesses. And Bill, deeply frustrating, a beloved church history professor of mine put it this way: it's like trying to tell what someone looks like by looking at their shadow on the wall from around a corner using a hand mirror. Right, I mean, trying to figure out how things evolve, sometimes very difficult. But on the other hand, how did the order of readings end up how it is? Boom. Well evidenced by today's daf. Okay, my friends, that's what I've got for us today. With God's help, we'll be together again tomorrow for the big CU. 6 o'clock Pacific, the regular time. Bring a little liquid to make a l'chaim and a little snack to make a bracha as we celebrate completing Tractate Megillah. And what an awesome tractate this has been. Have a great night.